Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Deck podcast by Prospects Live. And I'm joined by my buddy, Rhys White, the director of pro scouting at Prospects Live. And we're going to talk some AFL today, Rhys. We're going to talk some playoff races. Things are starting to heat up. And we're going to talk a little bit about the World Series once again and what teams actually have a chance to win the World Series this year. But how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing as well as someone who's watched their team give away a 10-game divisional lead. I just came back from vacation, so I'm a little bit rested, but then I kept checking the Tigers scores and I was like, oh, the Tigers are winning. And then all of a sudden the Braves come out of nowhere and have their best stretch of the season. So, life could be better.
How about we start off with kind of something that pertains to you in the Cleveland Guardians, and after that, we'll get to the Tigers right after that, okay? But I'm going to give you a little break from thinking about the Tigers for maybe 10 minutes. The Cleveland Guardians, all I wrote in our prep sheet is a curse word, blank is getting real. Rhys, is that a fair kind of synopsis of what's going on in Cleveland right now? Things are getting real.
Things are getting so real, and it really bothers me. George Valera is all of a sudden good. We're talking about Jose Ramirez, who's one of the more underrated superstars that any sport has ever seen. So and the pitching's been good. Everything's sort of working for them. I think I saw since like July 30th, they've allowed the least amount of runs by a quite a large margin. So yeah, shout out to all of the Cleveland fans out there. They've got a lot to celebrate, and their team has chased down what was supposed to be a juggernaut team, and now they're right in the thick of it. If not this week, they could overtake the Tigers for the AL Central.
The Guardians are one game back in the AL Central, and I believe that they are tied with the Astros in the wild card. I think that they own the tiebreaker as well over the Astros. Their playoff odds right now are at 58% according to Fangraphs, so they are projected to be in the playoffs for lack of a better projection system. But Rhys, when we look at this lineup and this pitching staff on paper for Cleveland, I mean, they lost Manuel Clase, they lost Luis Ortiz, who isn't as big of a loss as a guy like Manuel Clase. How are they doing this? My thought right off the bat is that the starting pitching is absolutely eating innings right now and doing so at a very effective rate. I mean, when we look at their power ranking for pitchers over the last 14 days, of course, we were on Fangraphs. They have 5 starting pitchers within the top 28 for starting pitcher power rankings over the last 2 weeks. That, I don't know if I've ever seen that much read before on a Fangraphs starting pitching rotation page before. Is that how they're doing this right now? Is just elite starting pitching coming out of nowhere?
Elite starting pitching, an elite bullpen. They continue to spawn great relievers. Manuel Clase, weirdly enough, wasn't even their best reliever. Cade Smith is maybe, we're talking about Jose Ramirez being like one of the more underrated players in the sport. Cade Smith he's like a top 5 reliever in baseball. He comes in, and he's, not a bad find for an undrafted free agent. So, but yeah, this lineup, this bullpen, everything's sort of working for them. They're mixing and matching perfectly well. Like I said, you have George Valera providing some stuff for them. Gabriel Arias is having the 2 to 3 weeks a season that he can actually make contact while also playing a really good defensive shortstop. Kyle Manzardo's been, underratedly fantastic. And like I said, what more can we say about the man, the myth, the legend, Jose Ramirez, who just had, I think he was the first player ever to have like 40 doubles, 30 home runs, and 30 stolen bases in the same season.
Yeah, a top 5 MVP finisher for sure, which will be his 5th top 5 MVP finish. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's just a Hall of Famer. One note on the Cleveland Guardians, I think they develop relievers better than anyone else in baseball. I mean, we look at a guy like Cade Smith being a setup man for, a year and a half, and now being one of the best closers in baseball. He was just waiting in the wings because they had someone better than him. Hunter Gaddis has been an elite setup man for a while now, but he wasn't necessarily always in leverage positions because of how many other guys that they had. Eric Sobrowski is a guy I've highlighted quite a bit this year doing my kind of minor league research, is a lefty who just has incredible stuff. And then in the minor leagues, they have more guys waiting. So while the loss of Manuel Clase could cripple a lot of teams, the Cleveland Guardians are the one team that is prepared to handle a loss like that because they have so much depth in their relief pitching. And this is a team who, if they make the playoffs, this is one of the best bullpens in the playoffs right off the bat. I mean, even a guy like Matt Festa transitioning over to the bullpen, they have a lot going for them right now. As far as the bullpen goes, it's just, will they be able to hit enough to first secure a playoff position and then also compete in the playoffs? I'm not sure if I would pick them in a playoff series, Rhys, but It cannot be understated how much fun this last week or so has been for the Cleveland Guardians.
It has not been fun for me personally, let me tell you. Colby Eller just coming out of nowhere and being like the best long reliever in baseball, striking out 5 batters per 9 innings, not walking anybody basically, and not giving up any home runs. They continue to constantly just churn and burn. Once these relievers get a little bit expensive, they just find the new ones. Oh, Jacob Junis, who was objectively awful as a starter for quite a long time, continued to pitch for very bad, I want to say Royals and Reds teams, and just in general, kind of being your 5 starter on a bad team. Which no shouts at him. That's a good way to make a living. San Francisco Giants. So yeah, we're talking about this team that they just have pitching down to a science, and it really frustrates me. I can't even pretend to be excited for the Guardians fans, because it just it's caused me a lot of pain the past 10 days.
Well, Rhys, let's get this therapy session started though. Let's move over to the Detroit Tigers. All right. I just want you to talk about what you feel like you need to talk about. What's went wrong for the Detroit Tigers?
Everything. I don't think there's something. They lost a game that Scooble started, which almost feels like a rarity at this point. Kyle Finnegan has been the only good addition. Winslow Perez has been awful. Dylan Dingler has not been hitting. Riley Green continues his, we always talk about 3 true outcomes. He's decided he's only a 2 true outcome guy at this point. I promise I'm not going to get too homer centric. What's his name? Torkelson just tied his career home runs, which is fantastic. He's the only one that's doing anything. Colt Keith, I think they lost him for quite a while now because of his oblique, which I offered to give my oblique for his if he needs it. And Kerry Carpenter has not been, lights out or anything. And then the bench has just been, who would have guessed that relying on Trey Sweeney wouldn't have been a great idea? He's perfectly fine roster fodder. The rotation sort of taking a step back. Tarek Skubal has been, he's locked up the American League Cy Young. I don't think anyone's even coming close to him. But Kiter Montero, Casey Mize, Jack Flaherty, the pitching sort of injuries have started to stack up. The bullpen's not been great. So it's just it's not been a fun time to be checking the box scores while you're on vacation and seeing them lose to, like I said, the zombie Braves.
I do think injuries tell a large part of the story here because when we
Yeah.
do look at the guys on the IL right now, I mean, Rhys Olson and Jackson Jobe would have formed, and did early in the year form out one of the best rotations in baseball when the Tigers were having so much fun and winning so many games because those were like your 4 and 5 starters. I mean, I know you miss Rhys Olson more than almost anyone, despite how he spells his name. Even some bullpen losses like Jason Foley and Bo Brisk. I mean, those are guys who like the last year Tigers with their super fun bullpen where they could play matchups and do all these fun things. I mean, they're now relying on guys like super old Paul Sewald to actually pitch innings for them, and it's not the greatest situation. But the Melton Mafia is well and alive. Kyle Finnegan is still, it forms a very, very good leverage duo with Will Vest, which is something that if the Tigers do end up making the playoffs, which they are favored to do still, Rhys, could lead to some fun October shenanigans once again. I'm not giving up on the Detroit Tigers. I still, as a Mariners fan, I do not want to see the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs.
I don't think teams want to. And by the way, Chris Paddock is not back. I don't know who was saying that nonsense.
No idea.
But no, yeah, it's one of those things where I do think the bullpen's there to mix and match. I mean, last year we saw Tommy Kahnle threw 28 straight changeups. He can sort of do that sort of, catch fire for 5 innings over 5 days, right? We can have that sort of thing. Rafael Montero actually hasn't been as bad as you would think Rafael Montero historically has been. So I mean, there is some hope here, but it's just discouraging to see the offense. I think is kind of the thing that's really let the team down. Gleyber Torres hasn't really been hitting as well. Parker Meadows really shouldn't be hitting leadoff for this team, and yeah, it's not been fun. I wish they would have made one more big bat. Who would have been really nice in this lineup? Eugenio Suarez. Who would have thunk that? So yeah, but it'll be fine. I'm not. I'm still super excited about the way things have gone for the Tigers. I think they're in the right direction. Just sometimes things happen in this random sport that we all love that we think that we can model perfectly, but sometimes a ball just bounces in a weird way and things happen.
Rhys, I want you to remind our viewers back home, what is the one thing that the Tigers can still do better than anyone else come playoff time that can shake things up?
Pitching chaos. They can mix and match with the best of them.
Boom. Platoons, pitching chaos, et cetera, et cetera. They can get weirder than almost any team out there, and getting weird in the playoffs generally I think is a good thing. I don't know your thoughts on getting weird, but that's where I stand.
I'm always down to get weird, just in general in life. But no, but especially in baseball, I think that when you're talking about a series, like, you know, during the regular season, it really doesn't matter as much. You just kind of need to get to the finish line, right? And the Tigers are struggling; they're limping to the finish line. But I think that once they get into the postseason, it's kind of a fresh new thing, and they have one of the best like scouting, like advanced scouting departments in baseball. And with an evil genius like AJ Hinch, who really, I think in the postseason, managerial decisions make way more, are way more important than they are in the regular season. So I'm just excited to see what AJ Hinch can do. Expect to see a lot of Andy Ibanez.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Rhys, we're going to move over to the Cincinnati Reds and the chaos that is ensuing now in the National League with the Mets, the Reds, and the Diamondbacks all within one game of each other and alive for that final wild card spot in the NL. We talked a little bit about the Mets and the Diamondbacks on last episode. I want to focus on the Cincinnati Reds now, Rhys. They're currently in a playoff slot right now, favored at 41% chance to make the playoffs. How are the Cincinnati Reds doing this? Because on paper, I don't know if I love the lineup or the pitching staff.
They have such a weird lineup. You look at their Fangraphs page, and their entire bench is right-handed. It's just a very interesting decision that they decided to go with. Miguel Andujar, Santiago Espinal, Noel V. Marte, Sal Stewart, and Jose Trevino are all right-handed hitters. It's not like they have a lot of lefties in their lineup. They have 3 lefties and a switch hitter. So, you know, it's an interesting sort of way. But I mean, they just keep scoring these runs, and the pitching. You know, I think that we constantly underrate how good Cincinnati is at churning and burning these pitchers. I mean, this rotation is not the sexiest rotation by any means, but I mean, it's a pretty good homegrown rotation led by Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, who of all the rotations that we could be talking about, they're definitely not the worst we're going to see, you know, 1, 2, 3. I think Brady Zinger might actually be the 3rd best starter. Then they put Littell and Abbott. Actually, Abbott might be the 3rd best starter. And actually, they might be one of those teams. I feel like I'm putting myself in a pretzel here, but they're a team that can really mix and match for that 3rd spot because Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo need to be starters. Chase Burns out of the bullpen, just allowing him to go, you know, like he could handle this. Even their bullpen's really right-handed. They really do not like lefties. So that's the one thing I do worry about with this team is in the postseason, there isn't a lot of lefty hitters or pitchers, especially in the bullpen, which maybe makes me think that they do need to bump Andrew Abbott into the bullpen. But they've been just, doing what you expect. Their bullpen's been locking games down. Their rotation's been putting them in really good spots. Hunter Green pitched an absolute gem recently, and the lineup just scores opportune runs. I mean, they have a really good leadoff guy in TJ Friedel, one of the more underrated leadoff guys in all of baseball, and Steer, Lux, Hayes, Benson, Ellie De La Cruz. That is not a bad 1 through 6.
I actually think their lineup's pretty fun, and we make fun of them for making moves like Cabrian Hayes at the deadline, but that hasn't been like a horrible move on paper. They needed someone to at least provide value at third base, and he provides defensive value. When I look at this starting rotation, I know I said they weren't great, so here's my thing with their starting rotation is I don't consider Hunter Green a playoff ace.
He's not
right?
a playoff ace. No.
They don't have any guys in a playoff game that you're comfortable sending out there and being like, yes, that guy can go win us a game single-handedly. I don't think that they have that guy. And the bullpen certainly doesn't have a lockdown closer, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Emilio Pagan is just not your lockdown closer, despite how great he's been this year. He is still prone to mistakes like, non-top closers are. I think a guy like Chase Burns in the bullpen, though, is absolutely awesome. This is something that I was saying last year, like I always do, is like the best starters who get drafted the year prior, I think that they can go directly into the bullpen. I said it with Liam Doyle this year. Last year I said it about Chase Burns. But he'll be in a leverage relief role in the playoffs. I truly believe that with his stuff, how much it'll play up over 1 or 2 innings in the playoffs. Like give that guy the 7th and the 8th inning in a 3-run game, and I think you're probably pretty safe. So I do think Chase Burns of the bullpen has been a fun wrinkle in this whole thing. But as of right now, like Mets versus Reds, Rhys, where do you stand on what team you think is going to make the playoffs?
I mean, the only player on the Mets that's doing anything, well, 2 players, honestly, is Nolan McLean and Juan Soto. So it just seems like I kind of like the no true stars that the Reds have, but it just seems like they're, what is the expression? They're greater than the sum of their parts. Like you said, they've got a really good, they got good defense going right now. Cabrian Hayes really does solve the issue that Ellie De La Cruz is not a great defensive shortstop. Cabrian Hayes sort of shrinks the area in which you need Ellie De La Cruz to sort of cover at the shortstop position. And then McLean is one of the better defensive second basemen in all baseball. So I think I lean the Reds. I like the rotation a little bit more. You mentioned that Hunter Green is not a playoff ace. I think he can be the next tier below that, right? Like I think that he can be really should be a number two, but like on this team he has to function as the game one starter. I have a question for you. Okay, I know we talked about it. Okay, you're going Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. Who is the third starter in the rotation, and which of these two from Zach Littell, Andrew Abbott, and Brady Singer get moved to the bullpen? Because I wonder if Brady Singer, he doesn't strike me as someone whose stuff plays better in a one inning sample.
No, Brady Singer is the most starter left out of all of them. And I think your lefty point earlier about how they don't have any lefties in the pen, I think you have to move a lefty to the pen, which kind of almost solves the problem as is. I
Yeah.
would say Brady Singer probably starts game 3 and gets 3 innings, and then you turn it over to a bullpen that is deep without, major star talent, albeit, but they are deep enough to, you can get 6 innings out of that bullpen one by one if you have to. I mean, guys like Scott Barlow and Graham Ashcraft in the bullpen are perfectly cromulent. I still lean the Mets, though. Going back to the original question, I think I lean the Mets over the Reds based on experience, if that's fair. I don't know how much you think experience playing, late September baseball matters leading into October, but I can't imagine a guy like Pete Alonso folding this last week of the season with so much on the line. And you look up and down this Mets roster. They have a lot of guys with a wealth of both playoff experience and just big baseball experience in general. While the pitching doesn't have that, the bullpen does. I mean, the starting pitching doesn't have that. The bullpen does. And a guy like Noel McLean, who's been carrying them so far, like a guy like David Peterson can step up in this last week or two to get them into the playoffs. I think I give the Mets slightly an edge just because of that experience factor.
I agree with you. And honestly, I think it's going to sound really dumb, but I think that I would feel even more confident in the Reds if they just had a lefty bench bat, right? They don't have anything, right? Just to can come in and kind of be, like we talked about earlier, like Andy Ibanez can come in and be a really good pinch hitter. They don't have that lefty option. That doesn't mean that they can't, I think Miguel Andor actually hits lefties really, really well. But like they don't have a someone to complement him, right? Outside of Will Benson. But Will Benson kind of needs to start games for them. So that's kind of, I guess, the Mets are better handled for that sort of situation because their lineup's just a little bit has a little bit more lefties in it. So I'm just, I don't know. I feel like I'm putting myself in a pretzel here, but I do kind of lean the Reds, even if I do think there is one weak spot in their roster.
I mean, the pitching is carrying them right now, and
Yeah.
it just kind of comes down to what do you want? Do you want pitching or hitting right now? And I slightly lean that I think the Mets bats have more upside than the Reds pitching. I don't know. Maybe they should play Sal Stewart, Rhys. I know your thoughts on that, but
Hey, honestly, I think that Sal Stewart's been a lot better. I'm going to give him some credit here. I feel like people are not going to be expecting this. He's been playing a lot better than I thought he was going to. I thought he was going to struggle in his first little taste and kind of just be a second division regular. He might just be he's just a guy. Like I don't think there's anything special about him, but he's just a consistent, probably when they need him to hit fifth or sixth in this lineup and be a perfectly fine power bat. Maybe he's the upside bat that this bench kind of needs.
maybe it's time to move Spencer Steer back off of first base and just hand it over to Sal Stewart next year and have him be an average first baseman. But I think that's where our NL talk will end. We're going to head right back over to the AL. The Seattle Mariners, I believe they're 10-1 in their last 11. They just swept the Houston Astros, Rhys, and they now are by far the favorite to win the World Series according to Fangraphs, which in part is due to how weak the AL is compared to the NL. But this insanity run that the Mariners are on right now, it looks like they have the AL West all but locked up at this point. Have we changed at all in our thoughts from last week? Are the Mariners, the best team in the AL now?
I still think it's the Blue Jays, man. I know, but I mean, you can't really count out against this rotation. Brian, we talked about how Hunter Green isn't a playoff ace. I think we've seen Brian Woo's entering that playoff ace territory. They don't have a left-handed starter, which is fine because this is one of the better, if not the best rotation going into the postseason. It's them and their Phillies, honestly. Brian Woo, Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, Luis Castillo. Who of these two, like which two of these guys gets bumped into the bullpen? Because Bryce Miller, could you imagine seeing him in the ninth inning? That would be absolutely bonkers. So yeah, your Mariners have been fantastic. They have everything that you sort of want. They have the ability to mix and match. Leo Rivas should not be starting games, but he is a perfectly fine switch hitter, can come in and handle himself in a low leverage situation, keep the lineup moving, keep the offense going. Victor Robles is back from trying to throw bats at pitchers, so that's good to see. And yeah, this lineup's been fantastic. Randy Arozarena, Cal Raleigh, the MVP, if you ask me. Julio Rodriguez, Josh Naylor, Jorge Polanco, Eugenio Suarez hitting sixth is kind of crazy. We're talking about a lineup that's that deep. I know he hasn't been the best as a Mariner, but if he's that upside bat in the bottom of the order, that is fantastic. So I think that your Mariners kind of are 1A, 1B with the Toronto Blue Jays. I really think the Blue Jays should be considered like the favorite, the class of the AL.
And it looks like the Blue Jays and the Mariners are going to get that bye and have some favorable matchups heading into the playoffs as of right now, with the Mariners' magic number being just 1 after the Toronto Blue Jays recently clinched the playoffs. The Mariners do have the hottest bullpen and the hottest lineup in baseball right now, which is something that really intrigues me heading into the playoffs. I think that's why the Fangraphs World Series calculator likes him so much, because of that bullpen strength and how many home runs they hit as a lineup, with adding guys like Naylor and Suarez and the Canzone resurgence. Even guys like J.P. Crawford and Victor Robles have hit home runs in this last week, big home runs to that point. I can understand why Fangraphs would like them so much, because we're going to talk a little bit about playoff recipes. What is the recipe for a World Series team? Rhys, before you look at the notes that I have in our little sheet here, what do you think of when you think of World Series winners and what the recipe is for that team?
So just looking back on postseason, I think it's going to be such an underrated thing. We talked about Brent Honeywell last week. You need a guy who's just going to go out there and go pitch until the wheels fall off, basically. He needs to be the guy that, when the manager realizes that this game is out of hand, you kind of need that. You need a really good left-handed bat. I think that sort of carries a lot. I'm not looking at the thing you sent, by the way. And I think you need 3 starters who you can ride, and then you just need to have a lights-out bullpen, which a spoiler alert, I really think the more that we keep talking about this, the Padres their World Series odds need to be higher than it is, because they have all the recipes that I think they have a really good lineup. They're solid enough defensively, and man, that pitching staff that they can kind of unlock at any point, that's going to be the stuff of nightmares.
On a side note, I did put down a mean future on the Padres winning the World Series the other day after our podcast recording.
Ooh.
16-1. Padres odds. I really looking at that bullpen, man.
Where did they rank? So you said 16-1.
Towards the bottom of the list altogether. I mean, it only seems
crazy.
like the Red Sox were below them and the Mets. So if the Padres do win the World Series, Rhys, we're getting Padres hats, and we're wearing them on an episode of On Deck. I'm just letting you know that right now.
Perfect.
So I read an article, because I was kind of looking up World Series recipes, seeing if there's any research done out there of how in the March Madness and stuff, there are prerequisites that you have to meet to actually win March Madness or whatever. I was wondering if they had something like that for the World Series, and they kind of do in the form of a Bleacher Report article. And it is the World Series winner recipe article by Bleacher Report. And here are the 8 criteria a team needs to meet, and then we're going to figure out what teams do meet this criteria. All right, number 1, have 3 starters who can log at least 180 innings. This is more regular season focused, that first point. Number 2, have 2 starters capable of a 7 K9 or better. I think this article is a little dated because almost every team has that. 3, have a lefty specialist who can hold lefty hitters to a sub 700 OPS. We talk about matchups in the playoffs. That's a big part of it right there. Number 4, have a righty setup man with a K to walk over 2, OPS versus lefties under 740, and OPS versus righties under 720. That one's a little specific. Number 5, it takes about a 2.0 win percentage added to be a championship closer. Okay, WPA, interesting stat there we don't talk about a whole lot. Number 6, the first 2 hitters in a lineup should combine for 340 OBP and 200 runs. Number 7, load up corners with 100 home runs and a 470 slugging percentage. Talking about corner outfield and corner infield combined. Number 8, strength up the middle is roughly 12 WAR. All right. With all of those points, Rhys, we're gonna go kind of team by team here and start eliminating teams from the World Series. Are you ready? I'm gonna give you the first one. All right. Starting off, let's talk about the Blue Jays. Do you think that they meet all of this criteria, Rhys?
Let me pull up the roster resource page.
Because
I
see a couple that they don't meet.
Who's their lefty specialist is a big question for me. Not that
I like Brendan Little and Mason Fluharty, but I don't know if they are. Brendan Little's been very good this year.
He has been very good this year. I do worry about that, but in the American League, who's the best left hand? If you face Aaron Judge, there's the right-handed bat. I mean, Riley Green hasn't been hitting very well. The Blue Jays I don't think the Blue Jays are eliminated by any standard with this. I think everything they've got the bullpen, they've got everything that you sort of want. Kevin Gausman, Max Scherzer, the only thing is they don't have that third pitcher who logged 180 innings.
That is where I was going to bring it up, is who is their playoff number 3, Rhys? Who's their playoff number 2, if we're being honest here?
Oh, I think Shane Bieber has to be their number 2. And I know it's going to piss off Max Scherzer, but like, could you imagine seeing Max Scherzer in a 1 inning? Like 41-year-old Max Scherzer could still
Yeah.
get it done in 1 inning spurts. And Trey Savage has to be the third starter. Again, they don't have a lefty starter though. I feel like I'm really harping on that. I think you need a good lefty starter.
I think it depends on your bullpen if you have some lefties in there. And I do think Brendan Little and Mason Flaherty are both going to be on the playoff roster, and they do meet that criteria. Then we
Eric
forget about a
Lauer's
guy
not
like
bad.
Eric Lauer, who's had an awesome year in a more extended role. Eric Lauer is technically their lefty starter, in my eyes, at least.
Yeah, I guess
So I
that's the
think the
point.
Blue Jays do fit this criteria. I would like to see a little bit more corner power, the combined 100 home run corner power. I don't think that they quite meet that criteria, but everything else looks pretty good. I think that we can keep them in the mix. All right, next team is the Yankees. What do you think about the Yankees, Rhys?
The Yankees. I am really concerned about the bullpen. I kind of, Luke Weaver's been really, really good. Devin Williams has had stretches of not being great. Who's their lefty specialist is ultimately the big question. That they can kind of use as a loogie. Although with the newer rules, I don't know how much the loogie. Tim Hill's actually is actually one of the more underrated pitchers in all of baseball. So maybe he's their lefty specialist. They have the power in the corners, depending on what you view. Aaron Judge is a right fielder, so he almost hits the home runs on his own. Cody Bellinger's been fine. Ben Rice has that sort of power. The rotation 1 through 3 does not well actually. So Max Fried and Carlos Rodon, I think both easily eclipse 180 innings if I remember correctly. I don't think either one of them has spent a lot of time on. Yeah, so the Yankees kind of fit a lot of the benchmarks here. The only thing is that defense up the middle. That
I was
really
going to
hurts them.
say, they are not sniffing 12 WAR up the middle. When you
No.
look at Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe, and Trent Grisham, who's been good, but Austin Wells and Anthony Volpe seem to be a real pain in the side of the Yankees right now. That would
And
be the one condition I look at with
and
this
Trent
Yankees team.
Grisham is he's a good defensive center fielder, but he's a very overly cautious defensive center fielder, if that makes sense. He's willing to let balls drop, and I just think in the postseason you can't do that.
Do you want to talk about the Tigers and how they don't meet this criteria, or should we just move on?
They don't because they don't have the third starter. They do have they can Voltron together the third starter, but we're not talking about that. So they have Tarek Skubal and a bunch of question marks.
And the last team that I think in the AL does meet this criteria is the Seattle Mariners. And I do want to highlight someone here, Rhys, and that is coming from the bullpen. First of all, when you look at the bullpen metrics that this our Bleach Report article wants you to meet, it's an elite closer, and it's an elite right-handed setup man, and it's an elite lefty specialist. The Mariners have all three of those things. And Andres Munoz, the elite closer, Matt Brash, the elite righty setup man, and then Gabe Spire, one of the best lefty relievers in all of baseball right now. This is a guy who can pitch every single day if you want him to. He still profiles well against righties, but lefties cannot hit this guy. Gabe Spire has been one of the best relievers in baseball this year, and there's no other lefty specialist I'd rather have other than maybe some of the Phillies guys heading into this playoff race.
I was going to say, if you want to transition over to Phillies, also Emerson Hancock is perfectly born to be the Brent Honeywell wear this. Yeah. He is the guy who wears every if a game's out of hand, he's the one who wears it.
If the Mariners are losing in the playoffs, Emerson Hancock's throwing 150 pitches if he has to. Let's go over the Phillies and why they might be the best World Series contender of them all, Rhys. I do not see a criteria that they do not meet. They're strong up the middle. They have a great bullpen. Their starting rotation is sound. Where's the hole in this Philadelphia Phillies team?
There really is none. Like Bryson Stott is perfect. If he's your 9-hitter, you're doing pretty all right for yourself. They have the ability to mix and match. I'm glad that we don't have to see Nick Castellanos. I mean, honestly, is he even like a lock to make the postseason roster at this point? They have the rotation that you mentioned. They probably have the best rotation in baseball. Joan Duran has been a really, really good starter. Matt Strom can kind of be the lefty. He's technically the setup guy, but he can also be the loogie if they really need it in a high leverage spot. Like let's say they somehow face off against the Mets, right? He can come in. Tanner Banks is actually not a bad lefty either. So they've got the options. They kind of fit every single criteria, and they kind of blow past it. I believe they're a little bit light on the power because I don't think they're the corners, unless we're factoring in Kyle Schwarber into the corner mix. But really, it's like they fit everything else.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper is carrying that corner power, if you would. But I mean, a guy like Harrison Bader has just been incredible since the trade deadline. Maybe the best acquisition of the deadline straight up. is really buoying this team right now. Let's move on. We're going to skip the Mets for now. I don't think that rotation or those, honestly, the bullpen questions are going to get done. The Milwaukee Brewers, Rhys, do they fit all this criteria?
Light on the powers in the corners, but
Very
that's
light
kind
on the
of
power.
that's the thing though, that they might not have the home run power, but they have the doubles. They're going to take the extra base. They're going to find a way to slug their way into that sort of thing. Caleb Durbin is your everyday third baseman. Does limit your power potential. Jake Bauers, all projected right now to be. I'm just looking at Fangraphs roster resource. So, but the rotation is Freddie Peralta, and then they can mix and match guys. They don't have anybody. I mean, Freddie Peralta hasn't even hit 180 innings, if I'm reading this correctly. So, and they don't really have anything else to play for, so they can kind of slow play him, just keep him on his normal stuff. So that's the only thing that they don't have, because they have the bullpen to mix and match with everybody. Like you said, they don't have the star power, but they just get it done, man. They just they've got the righties, they've got lefties. They can kind of mix and match and blow up people's game plans.
Yeah, and with a guy like Jacob Mizrowski, being most likely sent to the bullpen, that just adds that mix and match capabilities. Now our last two teams here, the Los Angeles Dodgers, Rhys. Do you think that they fit the criteria to win the World Series?
It's foolish to say that they don't, but they are a little bit. I mean, are we factoring in DH into the corner? Because you kind of can, I guess.
Yeah.
Freddie Peralta has been fine this season. Hall of Famer, really, really good player. Just not been. It doesn't seem like he's had like the crazy season that we kind of expect. One of the quieter 130 WRC pluses we'll see, but only 21 home runs for him. Max Muncy's been kind of up and down, and just the corners have been kind of the problem. But we're talking about a playoff rotation that they're a team that kind of bucks the trend, because they don't want their starters to throw 180 innings. They amass depth like nobody's business, and the bullpen's not been good. Like, it's been blowing games left, right, and center.
If you add Shohei Ohtani to the bullpen, does that change your mind at all?
Yeah, but where's the lefty who I can rely on? Because Tanner Scott's been not the best. Alex Vesia, I know some Dodgers fans that I interact with are pulling their hair out whenever he goes out there and pitches. Kirby Yates has been fine, perfectly fine guy. So yeah, I don't even know if Ohtani fixes the bullpen, because how do they deploy him is going to be fascinating. But I don't know. I don't think the Dodgers kind of fit this criteria.
Do the San Diego Padres fit this criteria, Rhys?
They fit a lot of this criteria. The only thing I am worried about is like up the middle a little bit. Center field isn't, it's Jackson Merrill. He's been really, really good, but he doesn't fit the 12. He hasn't helped with the 12 WAR. But Jake Cronenworth
Xander
right
Bogaerts is coming back.
Xander Bogaerts is coming back, which really helps. Freddie Fermin is a perfectly fine catcher. We keep talking about it. This is a team, they do not have the 180 innings from three different pitchers, but this bullpen might just, Maury Hone is if you really wanted to, he can be your loogie. Although Wandy Peralta kind of fits better into that situation, because you want Maury Hone pitching and leverage. He's part of the setup. Honestly, him, Mason Miller, and Robert Suarez, the way in which you can mix and match those three guys. Mason Miller is like the second or third best reliever in baseball, because Robert Suarez just happens to be better than him right now. So yeah, I think that the Padres sort of fit a lot of this criteria more. The only team that outright fits it is kind of the Phillies in the National League, but I think the Padres, are the second closest team.
When I look at this criteria, my mind goes to three teams: the Phillies, the Padres, and the Mariners. One of those teams is being slept on more than the other ones. We're going to keep talking about the Padres and how they could win the World Series, Rhys. That is now our hill that we die on, I suppose.
I'm down for that. Not a bad hill to die on with the Padres. I mean, they've been, this might be their last kind of run together as a group. Yeah, I'm all in on. Speaking of the Padres, it always blows my mind. I always think Luis Arias is older than he actually is. He's only 28 years old. I always think he's like 30, like 33.
He's your grandpa's favorite player.
Yeah,
Let's transition over, Rhys, now to a whole new topic, our other topic of this episode, and that is the Arizona Fall League. And this is kind of your expertise in here. My first question to you, to some of our viewers back home, is why should you care about the AFL?
So there's a lot of reasons that people should care about the AFL. For one reason, this is the last stop for a lot of we're not going to talk about a lot of them, but a lot of this is a chance for some of these back end pitching prospects to kind of work their way onto the 40 man before the 40 man deadline and the Rule 5 draft. It is also a way to put themselves into the quote the shop window and maybe be like, hey, I kind of have this sort of stuff. If my team doesn't protect me from the Rule 5 draft, you should take a chance on me. It also allows guys who have missed some time with injury to kind of get some more at bats, some more innings. It is also lately it's skewed younger. There's been a lot of really young prospects. It used to be very old. It used to be viewed as quote the finishing school. I know Pete Alonso went there and went absolutely crazy. The one thing I want to stress to people when we go in here is take every stat with a grain of salt. Except for like EVs and stuff, because it's a good benchmark because we're going to get a chance to see a lot of it. But home run totals, stolen base totals, runs, RBIs, batting average, strikeouts. Just take all that with a grain of salt. For the offensive stats, a lot of the pitchers are tired and they're done. They're done after about the first week or two being there. It is hot. The offensive environments there are pretty crazy. If you've ever been to an Arizona spring training game, you know that the ball sort of flies there because it's a very dry air. So any ball that's hit in the air has a chance to just go, right? It's playing the PCL. Use that as an example. But it is a good chance we'll talk about some of these. I've even come up with some superlatives with some sponsors that I have talked to that are no longer with us. But basically it is a good way to see lower level talent play up against guys who are kind of entering in the Rule 5 sort of section, or is this the time of their career where they might have to start thinking about going internationally?
Absolutely. And now I want to circle back. Are there any notable AFL success stories? I know you talked about a guy like Pete Alonso, but from recent years that really, made a player's prospect pedigree take off in the AFL in recent memory?
Oh, there's no prospect more than Caleb Durbin, man. Caleb Durbin was looking like he wasn't even going to be protected in the Rule 5 draft. You had the Yankees at the time when he was the Yankees saying that he was their opening day second baseman. And look at what that turned into. But Caleb Durbin is going to be playing Major League Baseball for a long time. I would not be shocked if he's a guy who has 10 years of service time by the time it's all said and done. Very Tyler Wade-esque. We've seen Jose Briseño sort of catapult himself from like, man, this guy's often injured, he can't catch, to who cares? This guy has one of the best bats in all the minor leagues. Could be a guy who he's got maybe a plus hit tool with plus power. We've seen pitchers take a step forward. Unfortunately, he hasn't made his major league debut yet, but Ricky Tiedemann came to the Arizona Fall League and kind of showed that he can stay healthy, and then he got hurt again, which sucks for him, but them's the breaks in pitching. Andrew Painter sort of did the same thing last year. It was kind of his like reintroduction to playing in games. Those are just some of the more recent examples, but we've seen, guys from all over the spectrum, to the Caleb Durbins, to the Bryce Harpers and the Mike Trouts. We saw Vlad Guerrero Jr. go there. We saw Ronald Acuna Jr. sort of put himself into that window to maybe break camp with the Braves back in the day, and then they sent him to AAA to work on his defense. And then he got AAA-itis. So yeah, there's a lot of success stories. On the pitching side, there's not as many. Teams do not like to send pitchers there.
Especially good pitchers, because they don't need more innings. They need less innings, if anything. Someone I always think about is Bo Davidson, a guy who I always bang the drum for, is we got to see his actual bat speed and exit velocity numbers, and that is what turned people on to being like, oh, this is a legitimate prospect because he hits the ball really hard and swings the bat really hard. How big are the statistics for some of these guys who've been playing in the lower minors who we haven't gotten full data on yet?
I think that's pretty massive. Like if you get a chance to see some of the swing metrics, exit velocities, launch angles, swings like speed and stuff, I think that's just such a big thing. It is ultimately the final checkpoint for the season. It does suck that this is just going to be me complaining. I'm writing reports while things might be changing during the Arizona Fall League. So like I wrote a report on Caleb Durbin last year, and then it turns out Caleb Durbin was going to steal 1 million bases. So then, everyone's like, you're too low on Caleb Durbin. It's like, well, I wrote the report on when I did, but it's what happens in baseball. Baseball actually doesn't really ever stop going, especially now with the World Baseball Classic coming up. We have, we'll do a Lee Dome preview and stuff at some point, because I love the Dominican baseball scene and everything. That's absolutely fascinating. I almost want to do a recap of their draft because some of the picks were fascinating to me. But yeah, this is a really good chance to see some of these guys. Even if a guy's pitching Double A, we don't have a chance to see his full data. So you get a chance to see what does the fastball look like, what does the breaking ball look like. They're using the Major League ball, which is also a massive help too. You get a chance to see what their stuff looks like with the ball. This is a common occurrence on deck. I'm just going to complain that baseball, like even Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball affiliates, do not use a standardized ball. There's a chance to see what some pitches, stuff, and shapes look like with the Major League ball.
100%. No, the ball. We are shedding light on the ball on this podcast because it is a real problem within baseball. That no standardized baseball. We're going to go through some of the AFL rosters now, Rhys, and I want you to give me some of your favorite players and maybe some storylines that you could see happening during the AFL, guys who could explode onto the scene with a really good AFL. We're going to start with the Glendale Desert Dogs, Rhys. Who are you looking at on this roster?
Okay, I'm looking at quite a few players. Nacho Alvarez, who has broken my heart this past weekend with how he said against the Tigers. Oh man, this is an Antonacci for the Chicago White Sox. Josue DePaula, Braden Montgomery, Kendall George. It's just a hitting, right? And the pitching is actually one of the better collections of pitching in this thing. Drew Hackenberg is one of my favorite guys to just be a really good 5-starter. Hyun Sik Jang, there's a lot of hype around him. He did not pitch well in Single A, and I did not hear great reports on him. I never actually had a chance to see him pitch in person, but every scout that I talked to was like, yeah, I don't know. Chen Wei Lin, one of my favorite guys, who's going to be an absolute nasty reliever. Luke Sennard is 6'8" and 250 pounds, and he does not leverage that fully yet. And once he does, that is a lead extension, and it could look like he's just placing the fastball right down. And Connor McCullough is a perfectly fine, maybe swingman sort of guy. But these are the guys that I really like, my Desert Dogs. Probably the best prospects, Josue DePaula, by quite a large margin.
Is there anyone you could see exploding onto the scene? Maybe a guy like Sam Antonacci. We do need to figure out a pronunciation for how much we talk about him. But that's the guy I look at. I'm like, this could be a top 100 prospect after the AFL.
Yeah, I actually put, so on our prep sheet, I put a little star by guys that I think are top 100-ish prospects names. He's probably like 125 to 150, so a good AFL kind of can catapult him in there. I think Kendall George can kind of just go out there and run wild, and people, like especially in fantasy baseball, are going to absolutely love that. Maybe overrate him a little bit, but because he's a speed and defense only sort of guy, fourth outfield type. Not my sort of blended guy that I want at fourth outfield, but and Braden Montgomery has a chance to maybe skyrocket himself into being a top 25 prospect for some. I don't think I'm going to be moving in that aggressively, but some will if he like hits like a couple 112 exit velocity home runs.
Let's move on to the Mesa Solar Sox. There's two names on this list, Rhys, that I'm super fascinated by because they're guys who I think have super high ceilings but had really bad years this year. But go through your pitch first.
Okay, do you want me to go pitchers or hitters?
Whatever you want to do, my friend.
Okay, I'm just going to go in order, and I put pitchers first. Jackson Bouwmeester, he decided that he did not want to throw strikes this season, which is very rough for those of us who are part of the Bouwmeester hive. Bryce Cunningham has been a perfectly fine Yankees prospect. I think he has a chance to develop into kind of a Cam Schlittler sort of guy. Not an ace, but perfectly fine 4-5 starter. Carson Milbrandt continues to be one of the more underrated pitching prospects in all of baseball, just because he's a Marlins prospect. If he was a Yankees prospect, people would be like yelling at me to put him in the top 100. Cade Smith is one of my favorite. He's a Yankees prospect who somehow gets underrated. I really like him. And then let's go on to the hitters. Starling Kaba, maybe one of the best defenders you'll watch in all of minor league baseball. Ed Howard's still kicking it. A shout out to him. This name, I've had all season. I've watched enough games. I still don't get it. Joshua Cordero Greer, I think, is how we're going to go with it. And the Athletics prospect. He's one of two athletic prospects that are really interesting on this team. Cole Mathis, someone I loved out of the draft, and he is not hit. Braden Taylor only hits batted balls, and he can't play shortstop. So it is fascinating. Tommy White, Tommy Tanks, kind of has not shown the power that we saw at LSU, but man, that hit tool is really taking a step forward. I do think he's a little bit passive, though. We can talk about that at another point. Breyler Guerrero, he is someone who I think has a chance to really skyrocket up lists with a really good, strong AFL. PJ Morlando, not my sort of type prospect, left fielder, first base, but he can hit, heads for a little bit of power. And Aiden Smith, people were fighting over themselves to rank this guy as being the high guy on him this past offseason. He did not have a season that we would have wanted, and that happens from time to time. Maybe he's not an elite prospect, but he is going to be a perfectly fine guy who steps back. I think the power got a little bit oversold with him. I think I was kind of responsible for that. I thought there was going to be more power in game, but he's more of a hit tool guy with a sprinkling of power.
Yeah, I look at Jackson Baumeister and Aiden Smith as two guys who had very good 2024s and poor 2025s who could have a redemption arc of sorts and get back into that top 150 range because Jackson Baumeister has the stuff to be a great starting pitcher prospect. I'll stand by that. The guy could not hit a barn this year if he tried to. So looking at those two for the Mesa Solar Sox to kind of come back, and Braylor Guerrero is someone I could see kind of rocket up lists this offseason. He could have some really good EV posting. There is quite a lot of raw power in that frame and that swing for Braylor Guerrero. So I'm interested to see if he might be like the Bo Davidson of this year, Rhys. But let's move on to the Peoria Javelinas, unless you have anything more on Braylor Guerrero.
No, he's a power over hit guy, and he might. Do you know who he kind of reminds me of? He's a little bit lower down in the minor leagues. He kind of reminds me of Kemp Alderman. It's a lot of power, but the hit tool I don't think will ever allow the power to play consistently. But let's move on to the Peoria Javelinas, who have one of the weaker pitching staffs in the entire thing. But they have maybe my favorite pitching prospect in this entire thing that we haven't talked about. Luis De Leon is an absolute. I think this guy is going to be an absolutely nasty leverage. Like he could be a top 10 closer in baseball. Zach Fruit, great name for the Baltimore Orioles, two Baltimore Orioles. Isaiah Lowe. I feel like I had to put some sort of Padres prospect on here. And Lowe is fine. Probably a 4-5 starter, probably better as a bullpen guy. Okay, let's go on to the hitters. The hitters are what really, they have the best catching trio. They're the only team I think that's carrying 3 catchers. Alfredo Juno, who is really pushing. I'm like in my preliminary top 100 that only I see, and no one else is going to see this. He's a top 15 prospect. Ethan Anderson was a 2024 draftee, didn't really have the season that we wanted. Switch hitter, can catch a little bit. Ethan Salas, the most controversial prospect in all baseball. You either love him or hate him. I think a lot of people lean more towards the hate. I think that he's going to be a really good catcher, just not in the way that I think people expected. Billy Amick, first base prospect, former University of Tennessee guy, has for a bunch of power, has a little bit of hit tool. Leo Balcazar is someone that I really, really like. One of the more underrated prospects in my mind. Has some power, has some speed, can kind of do a bit of this, a bit of that, center field type. Johnny Formello, who, we all know he tore his ACL, I believe, last season, and is recovering. We need to talk about ACL recovery, same way we talk about Tommy John's. The year after you've recovered, that I think that you start to notice the explosiveness back. Enrique Bradfield Jr. plays with a bunch of swag. I love him. Honestly, I think that he has a chance to break camp with the team because he's probably the best defensive center fielder. And Hendry Mendez, the biggest riser after the trade deadline. People had a chance to finally look into Hendry Mendez. Is Hendry Mendez one of the 9 best Twins hitters in their organization right now? Because if you're in a league and Hendry Mendez is not rostered, you need to go pick him up. He's probably a top 100 guy.
The Henry Mendez shout is absolutely awesome. The catchers for this Javelinas team is almost ridiculous. Like these guys are gonna have to share some DH duties. Looking at a guy like Enrique Bradfield Jr., what's stopping him from hitting 370 in the AFL against these poor pitchers and just putting a stamp on what was a very good year for him?
He might walk away with the batting title. Like I would not be shocked. Like he has enough ability to kind of manipulate and which the way batted balls come off the bat, so he can kind of take the ball the other way. He shows a little bit of pull side stuff, so he could definitely and the speed ultimately. Any ground ball hit to a third baseman who is not fully ready for what he can do on the base paths. I think he's a chance to hit like really high. And honestly, like if you're betting on the AFL, I think there's something called 1-800-GAMBLER, but he would be the betting favorite to hit for to have the highest average.
Let's move on to the Salt River Rafters Rhys. Slightly less talented team than some of the other ones we're going to talk about today.
Oh, this is the most talent poor team there is. The most interesting prospect is Luis
I was trying
Pereira.
to put it nicely.
Yeah. When you have the Rockies, the Pirates, and the Angels sharing a team, it does kind of hurt the talent that's coming. But Yordan Chalas is one of my favorite relief prospects. He's not a reliever yet, but he might as well be ostensibly one. Luis Pereira is also someone I think some people like him more than I do. I know there's a lot of buzz about him. The stuff's nasty, but I do wonder what the command looks like, and I do think that this guy could be a really, really good leverage reliever. You're going to notice I say that a lot about these pitchers because I think a lot of these pitchers who are at the Arizona Fall League are relievers at the end of the day. Carlson Reed's probably a 5 starter, but that's because he's with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Brandon Neely did not pitch at all in the minor leagues, so this is the first chance we get a chance to see him, if we even get a chance to see him. One of my favorite under the radar prospects is Johan Fran Garcia. You will notice that he has a fun name. It starts with a J, and his last name is Garcia. He is the brother of Justixson Garcia. And Johan Fran is a interesting build for a catcher. And the fact that I don't think he's a catcher, he's probably a DH first baseman, but man, that bat might be really good. Juan Flores is a good defensive catcher, and that's kind of about it. Yancel Luis, I remember I was sitting in the scout section last year for who's the Visalia team came into the Angels affiliate. I watch a lot of bad affiliates, and the scout was basically, I want to see this 80 arm, and Yancel Luis has an 80 arm. It is an absolute rocket attached to him. Charlie Condon is one of the prospects I think I'm just going to continue to be the lowest guy on. I don't really buy what he's doing, but that is what it is. And Rowdy Rodriguez is a fun story. I believe he was one of the higher WRC pluses. Had some power, had some speed. Was the only interesting hitting prospect that the Angels affiliate had that I would go to.
All great notes on some prospects that are not as hyped up as maybe some others are. Let's go on to the Scottsdale Scorpions. Great name. Rhys, what are your thoughts on the Scorpions?
I love the Scorpions. They're probably one of the better logos. The best logo is the last team we'll talk about. Okay. One interesting pitching prospect, Sean-Paul Lignon. Sean-Paul Lignon is a changeup first guy, and we're going to see how far a changeup first profile can carry. It's bad fastball shape. It is a bad breaking ball. But man, that changeup, it is special. Let's go on to the hitters. That's where the exciting stuff happens. I like Chris Suarez a lot. Or Chris Suero, sorry. I don't know why I said Suarez. Chris Suero is not a catcher, but he's going to be catching in the AFL from my full understanding. He's a first base left fielder, really good bat, has some power, has enough contact skills. Max Anderson he plays second base. He legally is allowed to play there. Should he be playing there? I don't know if they've been playing him at third base a little bit as well, but he sort of came back from the dead. He had a really bad first full season of minor league baseball. Let's move on to some guys that I put question marks on. And question marks are, I guess we can talk about them. They have some buzz. Seaver King is looking like one of the, I know it's super early on, but one of the worst selections in that draft. Who would have guessed that the guy with the worst approach, but you were betting on the athleticism, and an organization that hasn't shown an ability to get the approach to take a step forward wouldn't turn out very well. I still think there's something here as like a back into the bench piece. Walker Martin cannot hit. But when he does hit, man, there's some power there, but he doesn't hit on a consistent basis. Let's talk about a guy who can actually hit and consistently hit. We're talking about Kevin McGonigal. You know what? I don't know if I've talked to you about this. I'm leaning towards Kevin McGonigal might be the number one prospect in baseball. I'm kind of moving past Connor Griffin, and it's something that Connor Griffin has done, but the more I dig into Kevin McGonigal, I'm just so sure that this guy's going to hit in Major League Baseball. I have no qualms about it. He can hit for power the other way. He can take things to the pull side. Everything with Kevin McGonigal is optimized. I think he's a better shortstop than I think people realize. There's going to be some people who go to Arizona Fall League and are kind of surprised that they'll think that this guy can't play shortstop. He can be a 50 there for the first couple of years of his career. Zach Cole is your classic Houston Astros power, speed, mix of tools. Does he make enough contact sort of guy? Nick Morabito is one of the more underrated prospects in all of baseball. He has some power, speed, can play, all three outfield positions. I don't think he really won playing center field all that often, but he can play there. And then Ethan Petrie is one of the few 2025 draftees. Ethan Petrie is not my cup of tea, but they list him as an outfielder, which is interesting. What do you think about the Scottsdale Scorpions?
Zach Cole was hitting cleanup for the Astros the other day. It'll be interesting to see if he even makes it to the AFL or if they even want him to go there. I think your Kevin McGonigal point is really good. Is he better Jacob Wilson? Optimized Jacob Wilson? I think so. I'm really interested to see Seaver King because we as a society, I'm calling us a society now, have gotten so low on Seaver King that is there some room for him to climb back up? Because we've all kind of given up on him already. I'm interested to see Seaver King in the AFL, especially against some worse competition. Maybe just get the guy's confidence up a little bit. I'm ready to move on to this last team, though, who have some really fun guys. The surprise Segueros, Rhys.
They are the biggest surprise offense because we'll talk about the offense here in a second. The Daniel Espino, we'll talk about him more in a minute. I created an award for him. And Emiliano Teodo, he is fantastic. I think that dude's going to be absolutely crazy out of a bullpen. I don't think he's a starter. Let's go on to the hitters. No. You have to sign a waiver into the batter's box when he's pitching. Marco Dinges. Oh my gosh, man! This catching duo is fantastic. Dinges and Blake Mitchell of the Kansas City Royals. I mean, that's two of the better catchers. This catching tandem beats the Alfredo Duno and Ethan Salas and Ethan Anderson duo or trio actually. So Dinges has been fantastic. He's probably in the top 100 conversation. I don't think any other publications have him there. He might enter that conversation for us. Blake Mitchell, also another top 100 prospect-ish guy. Power, speed from the catcher position, good athlete, good arm, can also go play third base if you absolutely need it. Okay. Josh Adamczewski. He was someone who kind of made the back end of our top 100. I love him. Good contact skills. Very much in the vein of Kevin McGonigal before Kevin McGonigal started hitting for power. I don't think Adamczewski can play shortstop, though, so maybe that's why he's a little bit lower. Aiden Miller. Shout out to Lucas Morel. He wrote a really good article, The Dynasty Diplomas, on Aiden Miller. Aiden Miller kind of has everything that you kind of want. There's some power. He looks like Timothy Chalamet. If you look at his go look at his MILB page, he looks just like Timothy Chalamet. It's crazy. But maybe this is Timothy Chalamet's greatest role, being Aiden Miller. There's power, speed. There's a little bit of speed. There's good plate approach too. He's basically waiting to take Alec Boehm's job. Sebastian Walcott has not had the season that you and I or anybody really thought he would have. Will Thompson still loves him. Will Thompson's out there riding and dying for him and Jordan Lawler. Shout out, Will, if you're listening to this, I love you, buddy. And then Chase DeLauder, who hasn't had a chance to stay healthy, but when he does stay healthy, he is pretty awesome. But just at this point, we're just seeing the injury sort of stack up with him.
My whole takeaway is so happy for Daniel Spino. That's kind of the whole takeaway. I mean, if you don't know that story, go do a little bit of research, and I think
we'll talk about it here in a second.
I think you'll feel very similarly. Okay, Rhys, AFL Superlatives. I have loved what you've done with the awards here. Do you want to announce these awards?
Yeah, I still need to come up with 2 presenting sponsors for some of these. They are, so for the bit, a lot of them are businesses that are no longer with us. So we want to talk about Daniel Espino. We have an award for him, the Daniel Espino Memorial Award for this guy. It is awesome. He is pitching in a game award presented by AOL Instant Messenger. That's not funny. You don't need to do that. You don't need to be doing that. He's presented by the Detroit Lions and Terry Skubal. But yeah, Daniel Espino, it's awesome that he's singing. For those that don't know his story, he has had back-to-back shoulder surgeries and shoulder injuries that have kind of taken him out. He hasn't pitched in a game since 2022. Man, I was a different man in 2022. Let me tell you. I can't imagine what Daniel Espino's gone through, life-wise, and just wondering if he's ever going to pitch again. And it's fantastic. He pitched okay, all things considered, in a recent game in AAA. The fact that he's playing in AAA is pretty awesome. But yeah, Daniel Espino, I think the starter dream is sort of dead, but man, I think that stuff's so good. He can be an absolutely nasty reliever. So he gets his own award. Okay, we're going to move on to the next award. The Jose Briseño, it's just the AFL award presented to the player who uses the AFL to springboard their prospect stock, presented by Blockbuster. Nate, who of all these prospects that I listed, who has a chance to springboard their prospect stock?
Talking about it earlier, I think Braylor Guerrero is an underrated name to look at here. Maybe not underrated because he is one of the bigger names in the AFL. But quite frankly, I think Johnny Farmelo coming out of this could end up being like a top 40 prospect. I think people are going to see the EVs and be impressed. I think the Mariners are starting to remove the brakes off of him a little bit because he came back from the ACL in the middle of this year and he did get injured. So he hasn't played a whole lot this year, but when he played, it was special. So if we get a healthy AFL from Johnny Farmelo, I mean, this guy could knock 10 home runs pretty easily, in my opinion. So that would be my pick.
So I would normally say that Alfredo Duno, but if I'm already saying he's a top 15 prospect, how much higher can I go on him? What is I going to say? He's the number 1 prospect in baseball? That's not happening. So I'm kind of having to scratch my head here and stall a little bit. But I think that Aiden Smith can kind of use this chance to springboard himself back into the top 100 conversation. He kind of fell off, but if he starts hitting the ball hard, it might not be over the fence power, but he has good EVs in there. I think Aiden Smith can kind of win the Jose Briseño. It's just the AFL award. The next award that I want to present is the Caleb Durbin Memorial Trophy, presented to the prospect who steals the most bags against
Durbin's alive
against tired pitchers and catchers. Nate, who do you think is in present? What's a dead business? Presented by Quiznos. I think they're still alive.
I mean, I would take Kendall George or Enrique Bradfield Jr. for this award. Unless I'm totally spacing on someone who's going to steal a bunch of bags. I mean, honestly, if we're talking about like Aiden Miller going from like AAA catchers to AFL catchers, he might steal 30 bags in 30 games.
Yeah, you took my 3 shouts, so I'm gonna have to go.
Sorry, I said every name. That was horrible podcasting.
No, you're fine. It's okay. I'll just yell at you at the post record. No. Honestly, I think Leo Balcazar, he's got enough speed that he can kind of steal a bunch of bases. Like Caleb Durbin is not exactly the biggest. Like I don't think his sprint speed's anything crazy, but man, that dude just scrappy, knows how to play the game of baseball. Okay, the next award is going to the best pitcher presented by Tarek School's MVP case. That was just rude. We're not reading the next one because the Lions play tonight, so I'm not having that.
The best pitcher presented by Tarek Skubal's MVP race. The best pitcher in the AFL. Man, there's not a whole lot of great options if we're being honest. Rhys. I want to do a shout to the Daniel Espino This Is Awesome He's Actually Pitching award and parlay that with my best pitcher. What if Brandon Neely not pitching at all this year after being an absolutely, kind of dominant stuff force at Florida is the best pitcher in the AFL? I think it's possible. I also think it's very possible that Jackson Baumeister is back.
Jackson Baumeister is going to be my guy. I think Yordein Chalice sort of has a shout too. The stuff's pretty nasty. I'm going to go kind of off the board. We talked about him being one of the more underrated prospects in all baseball. I think Carson Milbrandt has a chance to establish himself as a brand name in prospect coverage. Do I think he's going to be a top 100 prospect? No. But I think that he can kind of catapult himself with a really good AFL. He's got good enough stuff. He's got good command. Yeah, he's a perfectly fine 4-starter. Okay, we're moving on to the final award here. And it is the best offensive unit presented by Radio Shack.
I mean, there's kind of only two teams that I would consider here, and I'm going to go with the Segueros based on the proximity talent that they have with guys like Walcott, Chase DeLauder, and Aiden Miller and Blake Mitchell being so close. And then you throw in fun guys like Josh Adamszewski. And I mean, that's 6 really great hitters who are all borderline top 100 guys on one team.
Yeah, I'm going to go, that would have been my guess too. I'm going to go with the Peoria Javelinas. That outfield is pretty stacked. Farmelo, Bradfield Jr., Henry Mendez, Billy Amick, Leonardo Balcazar, and then the catching trio of Duno, Anderson, Salas. I think that they're comfortably the second best offensive unit. Shout out to Radio Shack for that sponsorship. I'll get in contact. I'll invoice them after this.
That's going to do it for this episode of On Deck by Prospects Live. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Rhys, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Rhys B. White. They find me on Blue Sky at Rhys White. You can find me on Instagram at Rhys.White. What about you?
You guys can find me on X at Rasmussen Base or coaching in the Pacific Northwest. Come on out. It's beautiful this time of year. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on Friday with our next episode. I can't let her go. I can't let her